fans can now breathe a sigh of relief. The sequel to one of his better films in recent times, Drishyam, is not a letdown, and that in itself is Drishyam 2's biggest victory. The first Drishyam has a stupendous ending that had made us wary of the sequel like many others before it would ruin it. The fact that Drishyam 2 opted for an OTT release instead of coming to theaters, the of Drishyam was one of Malayalam cinema's biggest blockbusters, added to our suspicions. Thankfully, director G2 Joseph does no harm to the legacy of his biggest hit, as Drishyam 2 continues to be a surprise-filled twisty thriller, albeit not as good as the first one. Drishyam 2 movie review. Mohanlal's sequel to his blockbuster family thriller is loaded with pulpy surprises. Here we are going to discuss some heavy spoilers about the film, so if you have not watched it, tread ahead with caution. The original Drishyam was about a cable television operator George Kutti Mohanlal, a simple family man who had to hide a dead body of a boy his wife Meena and elder daughter Ansaba Hassan killed in self-defense. Since the dead boy is the son of IG Geeta Prabhakar Asha Sarath, the police are more enthusiastic in solving the case, but in the end they never find out where he had hidden the body, thus letting George and his family go scot-free. In the last scene, we realize that he had hidden the body in the flooring of the under-construction local police station, the last place where the cops would search for it. Drishyam 2 takes place 6 years later. George Kutti and his family are well off now. He is a theatre owner and is planning to produce a film for some time. While everything seems hunky-dory, the dark secret continues to guilt them. But George Kutti has forbidden his wife and children to not discuss the dark night ever under the roof. He was right, though, as the police have not forgotten the case yet. From planting spies as their new neighbors to bugging their house, the cops led by Geeta's, who is now retired and settled in US, friend the new IG Thomas Bastonips Murali Gopi, who is excellent in the film, are waiting for George Kutti or any of his family members to let their shield down by a stroke of luck. The cops find out they have an eyewitness to George Kutti hiding the body, a recently released criminal called Jose who had seen George at the police station with a shovel. Based on his revelation, the police dig up the flooring of the station and find the skeleton. After sending the bones for forensics and DNA test, they again bring George Kutti and his family for questioning. When Geeta pages his elder daughter to the point that the latter gets epileptic fits, George Kutti talks to Thomas in private and claims that he had killed the dead boy and offers proof of his act. Drishyam 2, missed watching the original? Let Mohanlal recap the thrilling story of George Kutti and his family before you check out the sequel on February 19th. However, the cops once again undermine their opponent, foresight and intelligence, and his rigid determination to save his family come what may. They realize that the next day itself when George Kutti appears in the court and denies all charges, and Thomas, Geeta and Geeta's pacifist husband Prabhakar said they find themselves having an unexpected guest. The guest turns out to be a once popular screenwriter in Malayalam cinema, Vinay Chandran Sakumar. He reveals to them that he has been working with a script with George Kutti from 2016, based on a story narrated by George Kutti that is similar to what has been happening in the case and even reflecting George Kutti's current predicament. While the listeners are stunned on hearing this, they get an even more shocking news. The dead skeleton the police find at the station didn't belong to Geeta's son. George Kutti always knew that his secret won't stay hidden, and his family would once again be in danger. Even though he didn't know how it would happen, George Kutti was sure his past would come back to bite him, and he resolves himself to be prepared. We know that he is a huge movie buff, and it is this love of cinema that he uses to build a shield again. Earlier in the film, his wife Rani Meena Sagar complains that he is spending so much money on his film and that he is turning an alcoholic. Little did she know that this was all part of his plan to save them. The lakhs have been spent on paying fees to Vinay Chandran for writing the screenplay. Through Vinay Chandran, George Kutti learns about the police procedures that happen if they discover an unidentified body. Using this information, he goes to Ernakulam to befriend the acting ambitious security guard. It is to be more friendly with him that George Kutti takes up drinking when the guard is on night duty. Even his benefaction to an old impoverished acquaintance had purpose in it. That man had been a grave digger at a cemetery, and after winning him over, George Kutti convinces him to steal the skeleton of another man. Since the identity of that body is not known, cops would not be able to trace it back either to the gravedigger or George Kutti. George Kutti had also never let go of the cable operating business, even if it isn't bringing him money. He even installs security cameras around the office. The reason is that he conspired in what's happening at the police station, which is nearby. So when he sees the digging at the police station, George Kutti knows his secret will be out. So he takes his bag of spare bones that he had kept in his office, goes to Kochi to meet his guard friend, and surreptitiously switches the mortal remains at the latter's office. Whatever he carried out as part of his place, George Kutti had made sure it was also part of the script that he was working with Vinay Chandaran. On the pretext that this script could be stolen, George Kutti published it as a novel called Drishyam, but didn't market it much, so it remained under the radar. It also helped that he sold the novel in Vinay Chandaran's name. So it was easy to accuse the police of trying to make George Kutti's case as being similar to that of a novel which was published 6 months ago. With the only eyewitness being a former criminal and the dead body being of someone else, George Kutti once again gets a reprieve for himself and his family from imprisonment. George Kutti might have fended off jail again, but he cannot ever escape from the guilt of his crime of hurting the parents of the dead boy by keeping them in the dark. As some sort of repentance, he burns the skeleton of the boy as per Hindu rites and sends the ashes to the parents so that they can complete the final rites. Thomas tells Geeta to drop the investigation against George Kutti, since it is now established that he will go to any length to save his family. He also tells her that George Kutti is already being punished, since he always have to be very restless throughout his life in keeping tabs on the cops. With George Kutti witnessing this meeting from far and then walking away, Thomas' words do ring true here. We have to get into some speculations. Although Thomas makes a fair argument to Geeta to drop the matter, she isn't seen to concede to his request. Being a mother and being someone with ego and intelligence to match her opponent, we are not sure if Geeta would even let sleeping dogs lie. As for the matter, even the police do. For George Kutti had made fools of them twice now. It also remains to be seen how foolproof George Kutti's escape plan was this time. While he did get out on technicalities, as Vinay Chandaran puts it, while differing on the climax of their screenplay, there are several loopholes in George Kutti's plan to save his family the second time around that is easier to tackle. If the cops really want to, it also remains to be seen how foolproof George Kutti's escape plan was this time. While he did get out on technicalities, as Vinay Chandaran puts it, while differing on the climax of their screenplay, there are several loopholes in George Kutti's plan to save his family the second time around that is easier to tackle. If the cops really want to. So will there be Drishyam 3? Drishyam 2 ends on a poignant existential note, makes for a defining conclusion. But unlike the first Drishyam, G2 Joseph is not afraid to keep the doors open for the viewer to visit George Kutti's always cautious world again. When? We don't know. The police jeep can always make a turn into George Kutti and his family's house anytime in the future. George Kutti will be waiting, and so will we be. Hopefully on the big screen next time. Drishyam 2 is streaming on Amazon Prime Video.